Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to the maiden voyage of the Zarley and Ziggy podcast here. I am Jim Merritt, joined as always by the faithful play-by-play voice of your Erie Otters, the great Paul Roper. Paul, how are we doing today?
Hey, doing great. It's always good to talk hockey with you, Jim. Able to drop the puck on what I think is going to be a great venture. I mean, I know that you're such a passionate fan of the sport, as am I, and I'm glad that we're able to do this through the magic of the internet. As you're down there in Pittsburgh, I'm up here in Erie. You're living the high life down in the Steel City, and you know what? Let's get things going. We've got a lot to discuss now that the NHL is back in full swing. I can't wait to see what the Zarley and Ziggy podcast holds for us.
Well, it's certainly going to hold a lot of Penguins talk, as that is my forte. Penguins coming off of a big win last night over the New York Islanders. After failing to defeat the Islanders earlier in the season, the Penguins came out with a good effort, get out to an early lead. James Neal jumping on the board early. Then they get into a bit of penalty trouble. Go skating ruts to the box, 6-7 penalties in a row. Luckily, the penalty kill did come up big. In the second period, Simone Dupre absolutely works Kyle Okposo on the boards. Takes the puck, fires it up, joins the rush, hits a wrister from the blue line. No screen, bad goal for getting the puck off, and the Penguins are up 2-0. And some solid play from there. Islanders get back into it in the third after the Penguins make it 3-0, scoring twice in about 37 seconds. To put a scare into my heart anyway, but the Penguins continue to skate ruts to the penalty box. Penalty kill continues to be strong, and Pascal Dupuis finishes the fight, burying the empty netter in the final minute, sealing the 4-2 victory for the Penguins. Their fourth straight, looking for number 5 tomorrow night versus the Capitals here in Pittsburgh.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jim, they're a team that's starting to get things together. They had a bit of an up-and-down start, and I'll ask you the question. Do you think there could be a goaltending controversy there? Because in my mind, I think Thomas Vokoun, now that he's been healthy, has looked better in Fleury on some occasions. I want to know your thoughts on that.
I do agree with Vokoun has looked fantastic early in the season. Did very well shaking off that fluky goal in Washington on Sunday, coming off the stanchion. But I would say that Thomas Vokoun is giving Penguins fans a great deal of confidence, backing up Marc-Andre Fleury, where Marc-Andre Fleury has struggled in the past, and we've had to rely on a Matthew Garon or a Brent Johnson. As much as I love those players, they just don't instill the same confidence as having a rock-solid Thomas Vokoun back there. I don't know if I'll call it a controversy just yet. Marc-Andre Fleury did look fantastic last night, making some cartwheel saves, being one of the best penalty killers on the ice, facing 34 shots, I do believe, and stopping 32. So, I mean, he had a great night last night, and big things from Fleury, but always nice to see Thomas Vokoun having a very good start to the season as the Penguins' backup netminder.
Oh, indeed. And you know what? I don't think the fans miss Jordan Staal either. Finally scoring his first goal as a member of the Carolina Hurricanes a couple nights ago against the Toronto Maple Leafs. But as you touched on, the penalty kill still looking fantastic for the Penguins. And that's a great thing to see, because that was one of the things that I think might have been an area of concern, is that Jordan Staal had a great asset as a terrific penalty killer. But, as it's been proven so far, hasn't really touched the score sheet yet as a member of the Hurricanes. His brother, on the other hand, Eric, having a sensational start to the season out there in Carolina. But I tell you what, this Penguins team, I think, is really starting to come together, and I thought that they'd be a favorite in this shortened season, especially with a healthy Sidney Crosby and all the other weapons that they have on offense. And Genny Malkin, James Neal proving that he isn't a fluke. And you know what? That trade looks so good now, because as we speak, Alex Goligoski's in a suit tonight as a healthy scratch. I mean, boy, oh boy, did the Penguins fleece stars in that trade. I'll tell you, James Neal is one of the best acquisitions that any team has made over the last 5 years.
I completely agree with you. The fact that Alex Goligoski is a healthy scratch for Dallas tonight, I mean, just sign Shiro to another 15-year deal. I mean, to fleece somebody that badly, not only to get an incredibly talented goal scorer in James Neal, but to pick up a very solid defenseman in Matt Niskanen, who unfortunately is hurt right now, but had played very well for the Penguins, pairing with Chris Letang. The one nice part about that Niskanen injury, though, and of course you never wish injury on any of your players, but it really did open the door for Simone Dupre. Had played a couple of games to begin the season, was riding the pine with Ben Lovejoy playing, and with Niskanen's injury really opened the door for Simone Dupre. Dupre has just completely stepped through it, too. Big goal last night, 2 on the season, looking very, very solid with Chris Letang. The Frenchmen, as they are being called right now back there, just very physical, very fast, and also chipping in on offense, which is always great to see.
No question. That's a good problem for the Pens to have. All those great young defensemen. Some of the guys that are still playing juniors right now doing a great job. Derek Pouliot, Oli Mata in London, Scott Harrington also of London. What are the Pens going to do with all these defensemen? I mean, it's a great problem to have, and it's good to see a young guy like Simone Dupre step up in the absence of Matt Niskanen, who's more than held his own since coming over from Dallas, along with James Neal. It's just good to see for the Penguins that an area of concern is really starting to straighten up. We saw it last year. They're in their playoff falter against the Philadelphia Flyers, in which the Flyers pretty much had their way on offense, but those young guys are stepping up for the Penguins on defense, and it's a scary thought that there's more coming up. The Rangers are sort of in the same situation not too long ago, and they had Ryan McDonough come up a couple of years back. There's some young defensemen that are currently in the minors right now that are doing a great job for him, but it looks like the Penguins are making some significant upgrades out in the blue line now. The young guys are getting ready for play, and Simone Dupre is a great example of that.
Well, that's the thing. They actually had so many great young defensemen, they couldn't even keep them all. Brian Straight, who is now on the top pair for the New York Islanders, just signed to a new 3-year extension at $775,000 per season, playing top-line minutes for the Islanders, and they lost him for nothing, for waivers, because he just wouldn't clear and they couldn't keep him up. They just had too many talented players on that back end. It really is a shame to lose Straight for nothing. You'd like to see him stay in the organization, a great depth piece, or at the very least trade him for another valuable asset. But I think to answer your question about what the Penguins are going to do with all of these young defensemen, I don't know that many of them will see the light of day here in Pittsburgh. Yes, Brooks Orpik is getting up there. Paul Martin, not a spring chicken, are going to have to be some in-house replacements down the line, but I believe Ray Shero, with his passing up of Philip Forsberg at the 8th pick in this past year's draft to take Derek Pouliot, is saying that defensemen are more valuable in the National Hockey League as it is constructed right now, and you can take a prospect on defense and trade them for an established winger or an up-and-coming winger, as we've seen Shero do with the Goligoski, Neal, and Niskanen trade. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Joe Morrow or a Derek Pouliot or an Oli Mata going out to secure some help, maybe even finding that mythical winger for Sidney Crosby, whoever that may be.
Well, I'll tell you what, defense wins championships. You look at the LA Kings from last year. They didn't quite do it with their offense, even though they do have nice offensive pieces. But it's guys like Drew Doughty, Matt Green, Rob Scuderi, a former Penguin. I'll tell you what, as a Pens fan, Jim, you missed Rob Scuderi, didn't you? I mean, there's a reason he's got another Stanley Cup reign out there in L.A. because he's a solid stay-at-home defenseman. Defense wins championships in any sport. I don't think it's any truer than in hockey right now. You need to have a strong defense to have any chance of even considering a Stanley Cup bid.
No, I 100% agree, and there were times last year where Paul Martin and Zdeněk Mihalik were both struggling on the Penguins' blue line. And on the Twitter, on the blogosphere coming up, who would you rather have right now? Martin at 5.5 and Mihalik at 4.5, or Hal Gill at 3.5 and Rob Scuderi at 3.5? I mean, when they let those two defensemen walk after that championship season, it took a big toll on their back end. You never really miss a great defensive defenseman until you don't have them anymore. Watching him play and shut down top lines for the LA Kings during that playoff series was painful for me as a Rob Scuderi, the Peace fan. that I am, but that is why he was nicknamed the Piece when he was here with the Penguins. He is a critical, crucial piece that every team needs a guy like Rob Scuderi to have any chance at hoisting that cup.
Well, no question. And, we look at, you mentioned how the Penguins pretty much gave up straight for nothing. Go to another team that gave up something for nothing. That's Henrik Karlsson, who is now a member of the Chicago Blackhawks. He was traded for a 7th-round pick. And, oh, boy, after what happened last night to Mika Kiprusoff, if he's out for an undetermined period of time, there's going to be some questions in net for the Calgary Flames. They went out, and they have Leland Irving, who is going to pretty much take over that role right now. Not sure if he's quite ready, but there's a team that right now is embroiled in a bit of controversy. This is a team that, with Mika Kiprusoff, isn't that good, and now is even worse without him. What are the Flames going to do, Jim?
Right now it's hard to be a Calgary Flames fan because you're stuck in between the need to rebuild and the strong desire not to. These fans, they do want to see a team that can compete. They do want to contend for a Stanley Cup. But at the end of the day, they're just going to have to realize this team, as it is constructed, is not going to be able to accomplish that goal. I'm not saying you have to blow the entire thing up, but Mika Kiprusoff's getting up there. Jarome Iginla on the final year of his contract. He wants to stay, but you got to know in his heart he wants to play for a Stanley Cup, and I don't think with the maybe 3, 4, 5 years that he has left as a top-line NHL player or even as a secondary scorer in the NHL, I don't think Calgary is ready within any of the next 4 years to take that step to make a deep playoff run. Without Kiprusoff, they may finally, like I said, hate to wish injury on any player, but this may actually be a blessing in disguise because if they completely fall apart here without Kiprusoff, and if he's out for any length of time, I don't understand how they would magically keep a winning streak going. But without Mika Kiprusoff, perhaps losing a string of games, being already out of it, as they have a very low number of points. They haven't played many games, but they're not winning many games either. May finally force them into that rebuild that they have so desperately needed, but have been trying to prolong forever. And you never know. Maybe that mythical winger for Sydney is Mr. Jarome Iginla. They did enjoy playing together at the Olympics up in Vancouver, and you wonder what it would take from a Penguins perspective to pry Jarome Iginla out of Calgary.
Well, Jarome Iginla is a player who I can't imagine not on the Flames, but they're going to have to make a move sooner rather than later, especially in light of what has happened with Mika Kiprusoff. Jarome Iginla is someone who could still be an impact player even at his age, but is probably best suited as a second-line player at this point, or perhaps a scoring role on the third line. And I think that Jarome Iginla could get a nice package for Calgary. But to change the subject a little bit, you look at Mika Kiprusoff. He's entering the twilight of his career as well. I mean, who knows what this injury could do for long term, but hey, Mika Kiprusoff came from San Jose, another goaltender who I think is going to make an impact. You've had Brian Elliott make the move from backup to starter, even though he's pretty much in a 1A, 1B system in St. Louis. Anders Lindback is having a terrific start to the year in Tampa. There's a goalie, it seems, that each year is going to make the step up. I think Thomas Greiss, a former San Jose netminder, is the next goalie to make that step. He's had a great start to his season so far. He had a shutout in his first start. A tough loss against Anaheim a couple of nights ago. He was actually outdueled by Victor Fost, who was a 30-year-old who came over from Sweden and has actually looked more impressive than Hiller so far, in my opinion, in his career. But Thomas Greiss is someone who I believe could be the next good backup to make the step up next year. And I tell you what, I think Calgary should consider going after him if they want to go from that well again, get a backup goalie that was disposed from San Jose, and hopefully will be their next number one, because Thomas Greiss is still a bit on the younger side. He's shown that he's had success as a backup at this level. I think he's ready to make the next step up, and San Jose coaches love him too. The guys love him in the locker room. He's a great locker room guy, and I hope that he can make that next step. And you know what? Germany needs another goaltender other than Olaf Kolzig, who wasn't even born in Germany. I think Greiss could lead him to the promised land one day.
Well, I think they're going to have to get some forward help. I don't think German forwards can can score enough goals to help Thomas Greiss out in that quest as of just yet. But with your point taken there with Thomas Greiss, and maybe that's a good landing spot for Jerome McGinley. I mean, you have a lot of other star power there with Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau having a stellar season. You have, Brian Clough, Joe Pavelski. There's a lot of big-name guys there that Jerome McGinley can step in and not have to be, quote-unquote, the guy. He's not going to take the brunt of the media attention. San Jose, very well known for a lax locker room, maybe. Not as much pressure, not as much media scrutiny, or certainly in the Canadian markets. So maybe that is a good falling landing spot for Jerome McGinley, and maybe, like you said, pick up Thomas Greiss and secure the net minding for Calgary for the foreseeable future.
Oh, absolutely. And one player you didn't mention from San Jose who I really like, the Ottawa 67's great, Logan Couture. He's quietly been putting home the puck in the net this year. After he was, wasn't he Mr. Irrelevant last year, if I'm not mistaken, in that NHL All-Star game?
Yes, that is very true. Poor Logan Couture got to drive home in a very nice set of wheels.
Oh, boy. I wish I had those set of wheels. But you know what? At least I upgraded my car this year. But Logan Couture quietly having a great year. But you know what? When Patrick Marleau is putting home 9 goals in the first 5 games, it's easy to get lost in that shuffle. But that San Jose team has looked really good, even with the exception of last night's loss against equally as impressive Chicago Blackhawks team. But I don't know if the Sharks can sustain that. They always seem to have great starts every year, and then once the playoffs hit, boom. But who knows? I mean, it might be in a different mindset this year. Shortened season. Sometimes they'll make good runs in February, March. When you're playing games 70, 80 this year, it's going to be in the Stanley Cup Finals. Do you think that a shortened season could actually benefit the Sharks, since the mindset could be a little bit different compared to what it's been the past few years, where they just seem to run out of gas come April and May?
Well, it definitely does not hurt their chances this year. I mean, the Sharks, like you said, notoriously fast starters taper off at the end. I mean, this is a team that almost lost to a very, very young Colorado Avalanche team in the first round of the playoffs. In my opinion, should have lost. Could have very easily been swept instead of if they didn't get saved by a couple of overtime game winners in the first 4 games. But this San Jose Sharks team, as constructed, you got to think that their window is closing as a cup contending team. But maybe this year, with the expectations going to Chicago, going to Pittsburgh, going to the New York Rangers, weren't a lot of people talking about, is this the year San Jose can win the Stanley Cup? Maybe because of that pressure being off, you finally get a chance to see what a San Jose Sharks team that's just going out there and having fun and trying to win games looks like. And if that's what it looks like, they've looked quite impressive, the loss to Chicago last night notwithstanding.
Well, absolutely, and I tell you, a lot of teams are, or I should say, a lot of the media is focused on the West, on St. Louis, who is having a good start as well, although they got smoked last night by Nashville, who's been inconsistent this year. But that's a very good point. I mean, there's really no target on the back of the San Jose Sharks, because people looked at them and say, well, this is anything come playoff time. So they're not even a factor. But a team like the Rangers, the target's on them this year after they made the run to the Eastern Conference Finals. The Rangers have struggled to start the year. And it's a very good point that you raised there, Jimmy, with the Sharks. The pressure, I think, is off of them, and they're having a little bit of fun, which is great to see, because they're a fun team to watch. I like watching the Sharks, and as a broadcaster, I like Randy Hahn. That's a tough decision. Last night, if San Jose and Chicago, you watch between the 2 local feeds, it's hard to choose. Those are 2 of the best broadcasters right there. Pat Foley of Chicago, Randy Hahn of San Jose. It's hard to choose. I try to watch a period of each. But I tell you, those are San Jose, I think. Hopefully the pressure's off of them. But you know what? If they stay hot, if they keep winning games, then the target's going to shift back to them. It's going to go off of the St. Louis's. It's going to go off of the Detroits, the Vancouvers. So who knows? I think the best thing for them is to try and stay under the radar and win games like they've been winning. Continue to play like they've been playing. The great offense, Antti Niemi, who I still think is a vastly underrated goaltender. People seem to forget. He won a Stanley Cup with Chicago a few years ago, and I still think it was a mistake they've let him go, even though Corey Crawford is having a great start for him this year. But San Jose, I think, at this point, is a team that I think is starting to get mentally ready and hopefully get that monkey off their back, because they're a fun, exciting team to watch. They've got stars seemingly all over the lineup between Joe Thornton, Pat Marlowe, Joe Pavelski, Logan Couture, Dan Boyle at the point. The list, I think, goes on, and they're a fun team to watch. They come at you in all different directions. There's some grit out there with Ryan Clough and Andrew Desjardins. It's a very solid team from top to bottom, and I really hope they have some success there this year. Some people make fun of those Sun Belt or Southern markets. San Jose's a market that's always supported this Sharks team. They've done very well in the Bay Area since coming out there, and I think those fans deserve a bit of success, and hopefully that Sharks team can provide it to them.
Yeah, and it would be great to see the Sharks make a deep run, because you look at a lot of guys like Thornton, like Marlowe, like Danny Boyle, and like I mentioned previously, their window is closing. You don't know how many seasons they're going to have left as top-tier NHL talent to make a deep run like that. But speaking of their opponent last night, and I certainly agree with you about the commentator duel last night, I had to stick with the HD feed, which happened to be the Sharks, but certainly never a disappointment to listen to Randy Hahn. But with that game last night, very exciting barn-burning start. San Jose jumping out to a big 3-1 lead, and then Chicago coming back to tie it up before the end of the first. And Patrick Kane chips in a couple of goals, one with a tender in net and one into the empty cage to pull out the 5-3 victory there for Chicago. And I got to say, Chicago looks like a scary team this year. I mean, they just do not lose. They haven't lost in regulation yet, and it doesn't look like they're planning on starting anytime soon.
Oh, no, they don't. And there's a team that is not going to have a window closing. They've got some great young players on that team. One player who I enjoyed watching the last couple of years in the OHL, Brandon Saad, finally got his first OHL goal last night. Long deserved for him, especially after he had been playing on the top line on occasion for the Chicago Blackhawks. Just hadn't had any offensive luck. Well, he finally scored last night. That's good to see, and he's one of many players who are going to contribute to the success of that team over the next few years. Of course, you've got Pat Kane, who, as you mentioned, scored a couple of goals last night. Jonathan Toews is one of the best captains in the NHL, in my opinion. They're set on the blue line, and Corey Crawford is starting to come into his own in net. There's a team who is, I wouldn't say opposite of the Sharks, but you know what? No, they could be opposite of the Sharks. They've won a Stanley Cup already, but unlike the Sharks, who have are a bit older per se, the Blackhawks are a young team. They're a team that could string together a few competitive years in a row, and boy, they've been off to a good start, but they've sort of flown under the radar. A lot of people are looking at St. Louis in that Central Division. People are even looking at Nashville in that Central Division. But Chicago is a team that people thought would be in the middle of the pack, despite the star power that they have, despite the fact that they're a few years removed from the Stanley Cup. They just didn't really trust Corey Crawford. Well, I'll tell you what, he is doubting people right now. Or I should say he's making the doubters into believers right now. Corey Crawford's played well. I think he's a big reason for their success, but there's a team that can roll all four lines at you and score at any given moment. That's a very well put together team by the Blackhawks organization after they had their struggles, but they finished in the lower seeds over the last couple of years in the Western Conference, but they look like a team that's very capable of pulling up another deep run into the finals. They look tremendous, and they could do that for a few more years. In a way, they could be the new Detroit in that division with the star power that they have. Detroit right now is a bit on the way out since they're getting a little bit older, but I think Chicago has the opportunity to be the class of that division with the star power that they have.
Yeah, and it's also just great to see Marian Hossa back after taking that nasty hit from Rafi Torres, who actually just recently returned from suspension as well for the Phoenix Coyotes. And, I mean, Hossa's looked great. Always one of the most sad moments of my life was when Hossa left the Penguins. I was a giant Hossa fan, still am. Still welcome home at any time. Baby, come back. You can blame it all on me, Hossa. Please come back to Sidney Crosby's line, because you two were magic together. But no, Chicago, and it looks like, we may even be shaping up for one of my favorite things, which is a Chicago-Vancouver playoff series somewhere down the road. And with this, and I'm going to say there's a full-blown goaltender controversy going on up there in Vancouver with the reemergence of Roberto Luongo, who's going on to his Twitter feed now and joking about how great it is to be a backup goaltender for the Vancouver Canucks. Everybody loves the backup. Everybody always goes after the netminder who has the keys. So it looks like Vancouver had planned to give Corey Schneider the keys to the car, so to say, and he hasn't even really been able to pull it out of the driveway. I mean, Roberto Luongo has been a great puck stopper up there for a lot of years, and he looks like he's pretty confident in winning that starting job back right about now.
Well, he's doing a good job of it. Corey Schneider, who I thought was going to do great in net for them this year, just came out and was not ready. And I think the layoff certainly didn't help him one bit, but Roberto Luongo had that same layoff as well. But I think he knew that his job was on the line. I think he definitely prepared himself better to stay as number one in Vancouver. Granted, it's a tough market to be in, but every goaltender should have the mentality that they want to be number one. And Luongo has done a great job of ensuring that he can keep that status. It's unfortunate for Corey Schneider, but hopefully he'll get another chance in the future. It's become a mess over there. There are fans that are ready to run Roberto Luongo out of town, especially in the salary cap era where he's got a big contract for so many years. It's just tough to figure out what team would have held on to that contract, and I think there might have even been a brief thought, maybe they'll use him on an amnesty buyout next year. But I'll tell you what, he's really doing a good job of keeping his head screwed on straight, and he is having a little bit of fun with it. And the Vancouver Canucks are winning more often than not with him in net. And it's unfortunate for Corey Schneider that has to happen, but you have to be ready to go as number one. It's not easy. It's a different mentality when you take the starting job. Some goalies do very well with it. Others, unfortunately, Corey has sunk in his first attempt as a starting netminder. We'll see what Roberto Luongo can do for the remainder of the year. But, boy, if I'm Mike Gillis, I just have to be tearing my hair out. You just essentially lost what could have been a big draft chip to try and help strengthen the team. You thought you had Corey Schneider to help unload of that gargantuan contract, and now he's even more handcuffed than he was at the start of the season when he had that big contract on what would have been a backup goaltender. But now at the start, and you've got a goalie who feels he should be the starter that's going to be backing up. So it's a tough situation up there in Vancouver, and it'll be interesting to see how it all settles down throughout the season.
Well, you have to think at some point they're going to have to pull the trigger. You either have to believe that Corey Schneider is Corey Schneider, that you signed to that extension, and we're planning on giving the number one goaltending position to, and you're going to have to move Roberto Luongo at some point. I'd see him play the goaltender tandem for right now, but if you're Mike Gillis, that's a lot of money tied up in your net that could be going into, a second line, which they don't have right now. Ryan Kessler still out, Booth out, of course, as well. So, I mean, if you could swap Luongo for some scoring help from some second-line players, I mean, they're checking out the depth chart here for the Vancouver Canucks. And we were correct in the two Sedin, Zach Kassian playing on the first line. And I don't even think you're going to believe this, but on the second line right now, slotted for Vancouver, you have Alexander Burrows centering Yannick Hansen and Mason Raymond. Oh. Two very quick, gritty players, but not top six forwards in anybody's imagination. Then you're rolling out a line of Jordan Schrader, Max LaPierre, and Chris Higgins. Then Manny Malhotra, a great face-off guy, great fourth-line center, but you couple him with Dale Weiss and Aaron Volpatti, who I think if you ask 95% or 100% of the NHL fans, 95% are not going to be able to name the second, third, or fourth lines on this team. It is a rough spot that they find themselves in. Great back end, Edler, Garrison, Bieksa, Hamhuis, Ballard, Tanev scoring his first goal. I mean, great back end, great goaltending, but who scores? Who's going to continue to score for Vancouver? If the Sedins and Kassian get shut down by a solid, checking line or a great defensive pairing, who's going to pump in goals for this team? I just don't see it.
Well, with that team, if you have a good blue line, I think it's not the worst thing in the world. That is a terrific blue line that they have out there. You need to get some secondary scoring. The hope is Ryan Kessler can get back out there. He's a first-line player who could be playing on the second line when he gets back. Zach Cassian has just done a terrific job with the Sedin, which is not a surprise. He was a tough player to stop in the OHL when he played in Peterborough and Windsor. And with the Canucks, they have a strong defense, and I think if your defense is able to do the job, you're going to try and outlast teams on any given night. As I said, the LA Kings didn't score a ton of goals last year. They got hot at the right time, but their blue line and their goaltending held them together. And I think the Canucks are trying to go from that well as well. I think they're trying to stick to that game plan, and hopefully they'll make a move to try and add some secondary scoring. It certainly doesn't hurt, but with that blue line, they have some time to buy right now in order to try and help relieve some of the pressure off of the Sedin twins and add some secondary scoring to their roster.
Yeah, and you got to think that they're going to have to get some more scoring from that back end. As we went over the forwards, doesn't look like a lot of goals going to be scored there, and yet somehow, despite their struggles, they did start the season 5-2-2, first in the Northwest Division with Edmonton and Minnesota nipping at their heels. But you got to imagine that Vancouver is going to be trying to cling to a lot of 1-0, 2-1 wins right now, and that's just not the Vancouver team that we've seen in the past, that we've enjoyed watching in the past. So it really is a shame just for hockey in general to not have that high-powered Canucks offense in the league. But, of course, hopefully Ryan Kessler, David Booth get over their injuries relatively quickly and get back to this team. But it's just a shame what's really happened with Ryan Kessler. Goes from being such just a giant star and a great player up there in Vancouver to being sadly very injury-stricken recently. And you'll have to wonder if he's going to be able to come back as effective and as excellent as he has played in the past.
Well, no question. You know what I really miss from Ryan Kessler? He's not video bombing anyone right now. He's not in the background creeping out whoever the cameraman is there. He's got personality, and the team could use, but they could use his scoring even more. And we'll see how his recovery continues. But they've been playing well anyway, in spite of it. And I think that they'll continue to be a top team in that division. Even though they've got some good competition right now in Minnesota, who I think has looked good so far this year. But Minnesota's made some big moves this week to try and beef themselves up, trading for the former Otters great, Mike Rupp. And a trade that really made me scratch my head. I mean, granted, Mike Rupp is a good team guy to have. He dropped the gloves, but he only plays 5-6 minutes a night. Or at least he did with the Rangers. I don't know how the Wild plan to use him, but he makes $1.5 million a year. $1.5 million. And the Rangers got Darryl Powell, who's a former Flyer and a very good penalty killer, and another former Erie Otter, and Nick Palmieri, who has got a lot of skill, but the work ethic has left a little bit to be desired. But still, a 2-for-1 for Mike Rupp, who did not see too much ice time with the Otters. I thought that was a very interesting move made by the Minnesota Wild, who were sick of getting pushed around and added some beef to their lineup over the past week.
Well, you also have to figure is that Mike Rupp did become expendable for the New York Rangers with their signing of Aaron Asham. Very similar players, both very tough, rugged forwards that are willing to drop the gloves. But with having both of them on the same team was a bit of a head-scratcher for the Rangers. So this makes sense for the Rangers, certainly going forward, picking up a skilled forward to help out with their farm team and getting a great penalty killer in Darryl Powell, who was pestering the Penguins quite frequently when he had his stint with the Philadelphia Flyers.
Hopefully it's another Brandon Prust. Rangers miss Prust.
Yeah, they certainly do. The only thing I was going to say about Mike Rupp going to the Minnesota Wild is that Mike Rupp is a talented hockey player. He is actually much better than the 5-6 minutes a night that he was playing for the New York Rangers. Referencing his stint here in Pittsburgh, I may be a little bit biased as both an Erie Otter and Pittsburgh Penguin fan, but I did enjoy Mike Rupp's time here. I actually think that the Penguins are missing Mike Rupp with his timely scoring, his just locker room presence. and his willing to go toe-to-toe with some of the toughest in the league. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see Mike Rupp playing a few more minutes for the Minnesota Wild, maybe even have him riding shotgun with Zach Parise if other teams are trying to take liberties.
Well, I think he was misused in New York, but he is a player that I think deserves a little bit better, and hopefully the Wild are able to use him more. Rangers fans certainly won't forget what he did last year during the Winter Classic leading up to it, and calling some players irrelevant, and then he went out, scored 2 goals in the Winter Classic, and did the Yager salute on top of it. So he certainly made his contributions in New York. I still think that when they signed him, the $1.5 million was a bit too much. I would have thought that sooner rather than later he could have been bought out, but Minnesota decided to take a chance on him. I think it's going to be a very positive addition for the Wild. As I said earlier, great guy in the locker room, is willing to stick up for his teammates, has good size, and I think he can be a valuable contributor for that Wild team, who were a bit on the small side at the start of the week, now not so much with the addition of Mike Rupp in their lineup.
And plus, when you are shooting for the stars, as the Minnesota Wild are doing this year with the big acquisitions of Parise and Suter, of course, joining Danley Heatley, Devin Setaguchi, and Mikko Koivu up there, when you are going for that championship glory, it never hurts to have a guy who scored a Game 7 Stanley Cup clinching goal for the New Jersey Devils. So, got a guy with a championship pedigree, also won in Pittsburgh as well. So, you got a guy who knows what it takes in the playoffs and is willing to go that extra mile and to get that extra and really teach maybe some of these players that haven't really had that chance to make deep runs in the playoffs. A good experienced guy for the younger players up there as well.
Well, that's what Craig Leopold said, is that Mike Rupp is a player who's won a Stanley Cup. He won it back with New Jersey, and actually scored big goals in that game to win it for the New Jersey Devils in 2003. So Mike Rupp does have the experience. He has been a proven winner, and could certainly be a mentor in the locker room. He was a very popular guy in the Rangers locker room. I know a very popular guy in the Penguins locker room, and popular with the fans. And he's going to be a player that's going to fit in well there in Minnesota.
No, absolutely. And with our discussion of Mike Rupp, is there any Otters talk that you'd like to go into on our main voyage here? I would hate to besmirch the hometown team. Make sure we do get some coverage on them. No, they came off of a rough weekend. I was home for the homestand there Friday and Saturday night, and just not looking very good currently. Big 5-1 loss on Friday. Nice goal by Connor McDavid. Unfortunately, that was about it, though. And then I believe Sunday just getting drubbed by the Kitchener Rangers.
Well, yeah, it's been a rough few weeks for the Erie Otters, who I think have started to get a little bit tired out there. Unfortunately, it seemed to become a recurring theme, but there's a team that definitely missed Adam Pelech for the 4 games leading up to that 11-4 loss on Super Bowl Sunday against Kitchener. I think that the Otters need to upgrade defensively. That should be an area of concern for the priority selection, which is going to take place in April. But Connor McDavid, he has slowed down offensively, but is still averaging about a point per game over the last month or so. And if that's slowing him down, it tells you how impressive this kid is. He only turned 16 a month ago, and I think he's still playing his heart. He gives his 100% every night, which is good to see, and that's what scouts want to see in a player. They want to see a player that is going to fight through adversity and is going to play night in and night out, no matter where the team is in the standings. And I think that's what sets Connor apart from kids at the junior level, especially those that are older than him. That he's going to play 100% every shift out there and make great plays and show off the great hands that he has, his phenomenal speed. It was his speed that led to that goal on Saturday night against the Sudbury Wolves, and I think that he's someone who I think could be a Pied Piper to the Otters, if you will. The fans have certainly come into the building in droves over the last 5 Saturdays that they've played, 5 straight crowds of 4,000 plus on Saturday night. Players are going to want to play with him. There's players who I know Erie's had some trouble. I know before I was there, of getting some players to report. But with Connor McDavid there, players are going to want to play with him. So hopefully they'll continue the good vibes in that aspect. Unfortunately, a 7-game losing streak, good vibes for them lately. But they do get some good news. Oscar Dansk could be back in the lineup this weekend. He practiced with the team earlier this week. And Devin Williams will get some rest. Devin Williams has not been used to playing 9-10 games in a row, as he had done on pretty much 2 separate stretches while Oscar Dansk was at World Juniors, and then after he got hit on what I thought was a bad play by Reed Boucher of the Sarnia State. I don't know how he was able to get away with it. Practically ran his knee into Oscar, leading to that concussion. And I think that with Oscar Dansk, hopefully he can get his reps back in and show what he's made of, why he was a second-round pick from the Columbus Blue Jackets. Blue Jackets fans and scouts are very high on him. They think Oscar's going to be the goalie of the future who will eventually take the place of Steve Mason and Sergei Bobrovsky. And have him back in net, I think, will give the Otters a bit of a jolt and also give some rest for Devin Williams. Well-deserved rest. Devin played well through the first part of that stretch in which he took place of Oscar Dansk. But I think that playing continuously did get to him. He hadn't been used to playing that heavy of a stretch and heavy of a workload, and I think Oscar is going to do well the remainder of the year and hopefully give the team some confidence. And Devin, and I think, will get his starts here and there. But the Otters are still very strong in net, no matter what the score says. What the score says, these goaltenders face a ton of shots a night. It's pretty easy to get tired when you're facing 40, 50 shots a night.
Yeah, and it was very nice to see Oscar on Saturday night. They had, Friday night actually, they had the Oscar Dansk poster night there, and first 1,000 fans through the doors did receive Oscar Dansk posters, and if you hung around after the game, could get them autographed by the future star netminder, hopefully for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Nice to chat with him a little bit and check in with him. Said he's starting to feel much better. So that's definitely great news for the Otters, as they can certainly use a goaltender of his talents back there, especially when he is someone that is very used to that demanding workload. Well, it was a great opportunity for him to go over and represent his country in the World Juniors. I think really being the third-string netminder there, not actually getting any play time, did set him back a little bit. And then, of course, having the injury right after never helps out a young kid playing in the OHL. But to your point about Connor McDavid, and I mean, he's just a phenomenal kid. Just watching him play is impressive. If you don't want to, if you're saying to yourself, well, the Otters, they don't win a lot of games and they're not in a lot of games some nights, yeah, I guarantee you the price of the ticket is worth it. Just that talented play at that young of an age. I mean, there's 3, 4, 5, 6 times a game where he's going to make a pass to somebody who's not even, they can't even take the pass because they never thought it was possible for him to actually get it through all the traffic. His vision on the ice is incredible. As you mentioned, his speed, ridiculously fast. With a home game I was up in Erie for against the London Knights, Danny Bilesman, Bill Guerin, Todd Reardon, Penguins coaching and scouting staff in the building that night, watching Harrington and Mata play for London. And poor Harrington got absolutely turnstiled by Connor McDavid with his pro coach in the stands watching. And, I mean, he just does a lot of fantastic things that some people won't even recognize for how great that he truly is. But if you get a chance to see him, if you're in the travel distance, we got a couple more home stands coming up that if you have a chance, come out and see this kid play. See him play live. You can say you were there for the start of the phenomenon, because this kid is going straight to the top.
Oh, no question. He'll be a first overall pick in 2015. And you don't want to put too much pressure on the kid, but the thing is that he's handled it really well. He's a true, tough to call him a gentleman at the age of 16, but that's what it is. He's a very mature young man, and he's very impressive to watch. The New York Times was actually out there covering him last week, and he scored another great goal, as you mentioned, back on Saturday night. But my favorite goal that he scored this year, which I actually got to describe to the New York Times, was the one that he scored against Zarley. You remember that one, Jim, when he stole the puck, went around first-round pick Connor Murphy, who played in the World Juniors, and then went around the goaltender J.P. Anderson, who's an overager, and signed by the San Jose Sharks. That was my favorite goal of the year.
Yeah, that was definitely a special goal. I mean, stick handling in a phone booth, around a defenseman, around a goaltender, jockstraps all over the ice, just puts it home, and you could just see the bench react to how impressive of a... And the grin on Connor McDavid's face as he came back to high-five his teammates was absolutely priceless.
Hey, you said it right there, the grin on Connor McDavid's face. The only time he's not smiling is when he's not winning, but other than that, he's usually smiling. He loves playing hockey, and I think that's another thing that sets him apart, is that I think he knows he was born to do this. He comes out there and works his butt off every night and has fun doing it. You know what? You wish that everyone could have fun doing it. There's some athletes out there that just go out there and just treat it like it's a boring job. I shouldn't say boring job, but they just go out there and go through the motions, but not Connor. He really takes it seriously, but he has fun doing it too. And I think when we see him having fun out there, the fans have fun too. And it's always great to see him playing well and having fun doing it.
And as another little public service announcement for any potential future Erie Otters fans, if you want to jump on the bandwagon when he starts to get really good. But a lot of building these days up in Erie there, with Pittsburgh being so close, you get a lot of Pittsburgh reporters. I know Josh Yohe from the Trib down here. Paul Steigerwald has made the trip up. And even last Friday night, you had Connor's agent, Bobby Orr, in the stands signing autographs for the fans a lot during the first and second intermission. So not only do you get to see a talented kid who loves playing the game do what he does best, but you never know who may be in the building on any given night.
Oh, that's true. With Bobby Orr, who was his agent, he was nice enough to sign autographs for the fans at last Friday's game. I know E.J. Raddick's been there this year. The old 2-Niners been there, Phil Bork. Lots of people want to see him play. Matthew Barnaby, who was one of my favorite players growing up. I actually watched Connor play in a game against the Kitchener Rangers, and there's been lots of people that have certainly heard about him, which is just amazing to say. That Erie, granted, different sport, Erie will lay claim to the start of the Jeremy Lin legend that he played with the Bayhawks, but he only played in one game, and it was on the road. He never played in front of Erie, but Connor McDavid has, and he's done it. He's done a great job in front of the Erie fan base this year, and we're going to have to, tell you what, it's going to go by fast. It's going to go by very, very fast, and hopefully you'll have your time to see him. The good thing is next year there's going to be more seats at Erie Insurance Arena with the renovations, which is certainly going to help turn around the fortunes of this organization. But if you haven't done so now, go out and get tickets to watch Connor play, because his time's going to run out very quickly. He's going to go right to the NHL, and he's going to be a star in the NHL and eventually be one of the most well-known athletes throughout the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a great chance to get... Time is running out on this season. I mean, they don't have a whole lot of home dates left. I believe I'm coming up for 4 more games next, not this weekend, but the weekend after, for the Friday-Saturday doubleheader, and then at the beginning of March, also a Friday-Saturday doubleheader in Erie. So, I mean, the home dates are running out. Maybe only about 6-7 home games left. So, as they get closer to the end of the season, tickets going to be harder to come by. So, make sure that you do, if you do want to get out there to see Connor McDavid. And let's not besmirch the rest of the Otters. I mean, Connor Brown, there's a lot of top talent, Stephen Harper, that have either been drafted. I mean, Connor Brown's a Toronto Maple Leaf draft pick, Adam Pelech getting picked up by the New York Islanders, and a lot of guys coming up on their draft status. So we'll see where some of those other Otters land after the NHL draft this summer.
Well, Stephen Harper was ranked 38th by NHL Central Scouting in their most recent rankings, and I think he's going to be the player that's going to be drafted highest amongst the current Otters. Nick Betts, granted, has struggled a bit this year, but his size is very intriguing. He skates well for a player his size. He was ranked 106th, I believe, by NHL Central Scouting. Time will tell to see if he's drafted, but hopefully he'll be able to put it together over the last 16 games, put up some points, and hopefully a team will take a chance on him. As a famous coach once said, you can't teach height, or you can't teach size, and Nick Betts certainly has got the size where he could be an impact player at the next level. He's still a raw prospect. And another player who I really like, who won't be up for draft status until next year, as he's a late birthday, is Travis Wood, who's got great speed and sometimes will show off that great shot that he has. Now that he's been put back on defense, I think he'll be able to showcase his skills more rather than being a fourth liner out there. I thought he held his own out there on defense during the games that he was put in. He's someone who I think has continued to improve with each passing week. And I think if he continues to work hard, he's going to find himself getting some attention from scouts as possibly a late-round pick for the 2014 NHL entry draft. So there is definitely talent from top to bottom on this team. Another player that I think people will like that they'll only get to see for the remainder of this season is J.P. Lombardo, who, if you followed the Otters a couple years ago, remember Phil Varone. This is a poor man's Phil Varone. Smaller player, but he works hard. They both wear number 22. Great on special teams, especially the penalty kill. He can win face-offs. He's a player that I think everyone should keep an eye on. I don't know if he's going to get a look from a pro team. I think he'll more than likely take the college route, but I think if you want to see a player who's going to work his tail off every night, go out and see J.P. Lombardo. He doesn't have much of a junior career left, but he's certainly making the most of it, and I think you should definitely check him out along with the rest of the Otters, and hopefully they'll turn their fortunes around and show a competitive team through the last 16 games.
Definitely wanted to comment on the Travis Wood. Definitely happy to see him back on defense. Very fast player. For his size, actually does take a lot of take the body quite often.
How could I forget that? He is the best hitter on that team.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, for his size, he packs quite a punch. I've seen him take runs at much bigger guys and be successful. So, if you like some hitting in your hockey, then definitely want to keep an eye on number 37 out there.
Yep, and Travis Wood. An interesting story on him. He was from Wisconsin, but played high school hockey in Minnesota. The thought was that he was actually from Minnesota. So there were a lot of WHL scouts that were looking at him. It turned out that he was from Wisconsin, which is actually OHL territory, believe it or not. So teams were tipped off on that. The Otters took a chance on him in the 11th round, and he's here in Erie, and I think if he continues to improve, he's someone that a lot of people are going to be focused on the Flyer in 2014, especially because he hits so well. He's only 5'11", 175, but it's a very tough 175. He's a strong kid who hits hard, and I think his physicality and the fact that he's able to take big hits like that, or give big hits like that every so often, is going to make a lot of people take up some notice, especially since there's some players on the team who have size and haven't really hit. But Travis Wood is certainly to do whatever it takes to make sure he earns more ice time himself on that team.
Yeah, and he's definitely taking advantage of the shot on the defense with Adam Pelech serving that 4-game suspension. So it'll be good to get Pelech back, good to get Dansk back. Nick Betts obviously rehabbing after his appendectomy surgery that he had to have there. And Dane Fox coming back after an injury as well. So the team's getting healthier. It's getting a little bit more cohesive, but definitely check out the Lombardo, McDavid, and Connor Brown line. Very, very fun to watch. Great cycling, great speed, great shots. I mean, just a really nice unit to go out there against anybody in the OHL. I'd definitely put them up there as one of the best lines in the league.
Oh, no question. There's a lot of good lines in the league, too, but that's a trio that's really fun to watch since they're all speedy players who have some flair. And unfortunately for JP, his career is going to be coming to a close in 5 weeks, but he's certainly made the most of it. And hopefully he'll close out the season with a bang, and who knows, maybe he'll earn a look from the pros. It's tough to say. Phil Varone had the great year that he did and didn't earn a pro contract until just before the following season with the Rochester Americans, and at the end of that season got an NHL contract from the Buffalo Sabres. So hopefully JP will project on the same path. He didn't have quite the career like Veroni did. He was a point-per-game player pretty much throughout his OHL career. As J.P. Lombardo is just breaking out after not having big offensive stats for the first 4 years of his career. So that's the big difference between J.P. and Phil. But that trio of players is certainly fun to watch. And while we're a bit on the same subject, staying in the OHL, a team that is happy to hear that they got one of their players back, Barrie Colts. They get Mark Scheifele back from the Winnipeg Jets. That's a big boost to the Barrie Colts and what is starting to become a tough battle at the top in the Eastern Conference between themselves, Belleville, and Oshawa. Mark Scheifele, a big boost to that Colts lineup. The Jets returning him back to Barrie for the second season in a row. And all of a sudden, the Barrie Colts get that much stronger with the addition of Mark Scheifele, who I think is a top 5 player in the OHL.
Honestly, I'm really surprised that the Barrie Colts are getting Scheifele back. I really thought that he was going to have a chance to stick with the Winnipeg Jets, not known for being the most high-powered offensive team in the National Hockey League. So to see him going back, there obviously was concern about either contract status or just not being ready for the big time. But kind of surprised to see him going back to Barrie, but I know they're certainly happy to see him.
Well, absolutely, and there's a team that's now was already strong that now gets even stronger. They get their best player back into the lineup, and with players like him, Zach Hall, Mitch Theoret, who came over in a trade from Niagara, Stephen Byers, who's a very good playmaker as an overager, Aaron Ekblad, who, like McDavid, was an exceptional player back at the point, and a good goaltender in Matthias Niederberger. That's a team you could definitely watch out for the Eastern Conference. Just an amazing job done by Winnipeg Jets great Dale Hawerchuk as the head coach of that team, helping mold that team from what was, I won't say laughingstock, but they were cellar dwellers when he first got there. And thanks to himself, with his handiwork and bringing some players in, as well as the work done by their general manager, Jason Ford, they've been able to bring in players to help the success of that team from becoming what was the doormat of the league in the 2010-11 season to now a serious contender for the Eastern Conference Championship and perhaps the OHL Finals, but or the OHL Championship, I beg your pardon. But with the London Knights running as good as they have been this year, they're definitely the team to beat out there as they look for back-to-back championships. But who knows? Barrie Colts could definitely make a run right now that Mark Scheifele has returned to their lineup.
And who knows? Maybe that was a favor that Dale Hawerchuk called in from the Winnipeg Jets. You got to give me my kid back. We got to make a run down here. But speaking of the London Knights, just absolutely trampling the league at 39 wins, 9 losses, 3 overtime shootout losses. Just an absolutely insane record. Put together quite a streak of unbeaten games. Plus, speaking of their championship last year, a lot of that on the back of former Erie Otters that were traded, like Greg McKegg and Brett Cook.
Yep, those players who were a big part of their championship run last year, unfortunately with their respective teams, as they've gone on to bigger and better things. Greg McKegg now at the Toronto Marlies of the AHL, and Brett Cook playing for Nipissing University up in North Bay. And I wonder what's going to happen to that program up there next year. They were the only game in town for the past few years. That's a relatively new college program that's up there in North Bay with Nipissing University. But the OHL's return to the North Bay next year in the form of the Brampton Battalion. It's going to be the North Bay Battalion, and I think they've already sold out all their season tickets there, and what's going to affect what's going to happen at Nipissing University, which has had a very good program, even though it's in its infancy. But they've been able to get some high-end OHL players, including Brett Cook, who I thought was a very solid stay-at-home defenseman who actually displayed an offensive touch in his final couple of seasons in the OHL from time to time, but was just a great hitter. I mean, Brett Cook hit very well, and the Otters certainly missed that when he left the team. But with the London Knights, there's a team that just seems to reload without any problems from year to year. And even in the coaching, they've reloaded with Dale Hunter deciding to go back to London after making a decent run with the Washington Capitals last year and turning that team from what had been a disappointment and managed to take the Rangers to the limit in the playoffs last year. So I think the London Knights are certainly the team to offense from top to bottom. with Max Domi, Seth Griffith, who is the Boston Bruins prospect. They also have got great blue liners, Ole Matt and Scott Harrington, we referred to earlier. Nikita Zadorov is a player to watch out for that could be in the first round of the draft this year, as is Max Domi and Bo Horvat. This is a team that could potentially have 3 first-round picks in the NHL draft, and none of those players will be in the NHL next year, even Max Domi. So there's a team that could make another run next year. Very scary thought, but London always finds a way to do that year in and year out, where they have a contending team. And after winning the championship last year, many people thought, well, they might be 5th to 8th seed. They've lost a few guys. They've lost Jarrett Knight, Craig McKegg. The Michael Hauser is now has an NHL contract with the Florida Panthers. This is a team that is going to struggle to get towards the top. Well, that's not the case. They go out, they have a big run up to start the season, and they're certainly the team to beat right now in the OHL.
Yeah, absolutely, and it speaks to the power of the London Knights program that you see Dale Hunter, who had success as an NHL coach with the Washington Capitals, choosing to return to the junior level instead of taking the prestige of an NHL coaching job. So that always speaks highly of the London Knights. Always a dangerous team. Really just expect them to keep being up in the top 3 to 4 teams of the league pretty much for the foreseeable future. Like you said, they never really seem to rebuild. They just seem to reload. So definitely keep an eye on them this year. Memorial Cup games often are televised on the NHL Network. So if you do want to see some of the up-and-coming stars of the game, make sure that you check your listings for the NHL Network once the Memorial Cup is upon us. And definitely a big story in the draft these past few years. A lot of players coming out of the OHL, CHL territories as opposed to the European leagues. So it's very interesting to see the growth of the OHL as some of the top prospects and the top players going to NHL teams in these drafts. So never a bad idea to keep an eye out on the OHL to get a chance to see some great stars coming up. I mean, you look at guys like John Tavares, Taylor Hall, Cam Fowler. I mean, these are all players that came straight from like Windsor in the OHL and London with Nazem Kadri and John Tavares. So definitely a good idea to keep an eye out on the OHL.
Oh, absolutely, and the OHL has just seen a great run of players that have come out through the past 10 or so that have been first overall picks. Rick Nash and Pat Kane, both of London. Taylor Hall, who came out of Windsor. Neil Yakupov, who came from Russia by way of Sarnia. This year, the OHL is a bit of a down year, but they're still going to have good players that are going to be taken in the first round, such as Sean Monahan of Ottawa, Darnell Nurse of Sault Ste. Marie. The league that's really having a renaissance this year is the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, and they're headlined by Nathan McKinnon, who plays for the Halifax Mooseheads, who could be a number 1 pick, but it looks like Seth Jones is currently the player to beat for that number 1 spot. It all depends on a team's needs up top. Not necessarily the best player, and I think for this season. In the past, I think that it's whether or not it was going to be you just pick the best player that's available, but this year I think this is going to be a need-driven first overall pick. If there's a player that's going to, if there's a team that's going to want to build on their defense, they're going to pick Seth Jones, who's having a great year for Portland and helped the United States win a gold medal in the World Juniors. Or if they want a shifty playmaking forward who has some flair and has some speed and is a very, very poor man's Sidney Crosby, right down to the fact that he's from Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia, the home of number 87. Nathan McKinnon could be your guy. So that'll be an interesting debate, I think, leading up to the June draft in Newark, New Jersey, one of my adopted home states at the Prudential Center, the home of the Seton Hall Pirates and the New Jersey Devils. So it'll be a big debate, I think, leading up to the draft, whether Seth Jones or Nathan McKinnon are going to go first overall, and who knows, maybe Alex Barkov could enter that conversation. I think he's a big dark horse to sneak up in the top 5 area of the draft, but I think there's going to be a lot of discussion whether a team's going to take Seth Jones or Nathan McKinnon as the first name to be called in Newark, New Jersey in June.
Well, also with you mentioning the United States team winning the World Juniors, a lot of Pittsburgh players, Pittsburgh natives on that team, and actually J.T. Miller, who was that Team USA victory, got called up for the New York Rangers the other night. So with Brandon Sutt's success last night and J.T. Miller getting called up by the Rangers, the growth spurt of junior hockey and youth hockey in Pittsburgh after the likes of Lemieux and Yager, you're really starting to see that come to fruition with a lot of Pittsburgh natives becoming NHL stars.
Oh, absolutely, and it's like that all over the country with the Pittsburgh. What's happening in Pittsburgh, that's the Mario Lemieux effect. It's because of Mario Lemieux that hockey became more relevant in Pittsburgh, and a lot of fans and a lot of young kids took to the sport, and it started to explode in popularity there. It started to explode in popularity in the late 80s, early 90s, when Mario's career was really in its prime. They won the 2 Stanley Cups in the early 90s, and those kids who saw Mario play are now starting to make an impact at the junior and pro levels. We touched on Brandon Saad earlier. J.T. Miller got his first game in the NHL last night with the New York Rangers. It's actually from East Palestine, Ohio, which is outside of Youngstown, but still close enough to Pittsburgh. It's pretty much Pittsburgh territory. And Vincent Trocheck, who I think is a very underrated player now with the Plymouth Whalers, formerly of the Saginaw Spirit, also is with the World Junior team that won a gold medal for Team USA. But you see that everywhere. Pittsburgh's definitely a great example, but now you have kids from Florida out there in drafts. An example of that is Andrew Yogan, who's now a New York Rangers prospect that's playing with the Connecticut Whale and not doing too badly there. You see kids that are starting to come out from Florida, roughly from the time that were born just before the Panthers started to come into play. You see it on the West Coast with the teams out in California, the Wayne Gretzky effect when he was with the Los Angeles Kings. Emerson Edom is an example of that, who's now in the Duck system. It's just fun to see these kids that are coming out of the woodwork and from what were not normally called hockey locales, but now are starting to become well-known hockey locales, and Pittsburgh is a terrific example of that. It seems like Western PA is starting to become a bit of hockey central right now because of the fact that Sidney Crosby had the draft there back last June that was pretty much packed to the gills for the first round. Just a great turnout by the people in Pittsburgh to watch the NHL entry draft. And all it is just suits calling names. And people came there and cheered and booed with each pick. Made it a terrific event. The fans did a great job of adding to the atmosphere in the first round of that event. It was great to be a part of that. And we're going to host a Frozen Four very shortly. So Pittsburgh's certainly making some strides in the hockey world, which is great to see. It's not just the Minnesotas, the Massachusetts, the Michigans. It seemed like a prerequisite for becoming a hockey state was to have an M to begin with the name of the state. But now you see kids that are coming out from Pittsburgh, coming out from Florida, coming out from St. Louis, Missouri, in California. They're coming from all over the place. You take a look at the U.S. National Development roster. I think there's 8 or 9 states that are represented, and hopefully that will continue to grow in the United States, especially when you look at the ratings and the tweets and what's trending on Twitter. Hockey's certainly making some inroads all over the U.S., and that's a perfect example right there of seeing some of the kids that have come out and have made an impact at the pro level that are coming from what we wouldn't have called hockey locales or hockey hotbeds 10 or 15 years ago.
And I do believe that Pittsburgh actually is in the running to host the World Junior Championships within the next 3 to 5 years here. So they are making a bid to host that as well. And any time that you can get good support for an international tournament in a we'll call it a non-border state, when you're not like a Buffalo or a Detroit or a Seattle where you have a big Canadian travel and influence on the people in the seats. So it would be interesting to see if they can make that a great event here in Pittsburgh and get a lot of support for the national tournament. Plus, never a bad thing for Pittsburgh's economy. All the players coming in from around the world with their families and friends and fans to fill up all the hotels and restaurants around here. So Pittsburgh making big strides in the hockey territory, trying to become a hotbed, as you said.
Yeah, that would be very, very great if Pittsburgh could land the World Junior Championship. It's sort of been an unwritten rule that if it has to be in the United States, it has to be in a border city, and that's why we've seen it in Grand Forks, North Dakota, and in Buffalo, New York, and I know Detroit's been discussed since it's right next to Windsor, Ontario, and they perhaps might make a joint bid, but I think Pittsburgh is a city that could pull it off. It's not that far from the border. It's what, 3, 4, let's see, it's about 2.5 hours from Erie, which is an hour and a half from Buffalo, so four at best, 4 hours at best from the Ontario border. And I think that Pittsburgh hosting that tournament. I know you got a beautiful arena in the Consol Energy Center, and I believe a very good secondary venue in at Robert Morris. But I mean, if you're really desperate, you know, if you don't want it that too far from, or if you're willing to go a little bit farther and have a larger venue, maybe even Youngstown, which has the Cavelli Center, an hour and a half away from Pittsburgh. But I think they would prefer just to keep in the Pittsburgh area and not in two separate cities like we've seen when they've hosted it in Alberta with Calgary and Edmonton, or in Saskatchewan with Regina and Saskatoon. I think Pittsburgh would do a wonderful job. They certainly have the capability. There's enough hockey fans in the immediate area that'll help fill the building. It's not that far from Ontario and Canada, in which fans could make the drive down. Also, they've got an airport that could certainly handle the flights. I think there's quite a few international flights that go out to Perth, so that would be a prime city, I think, if USA Hockey is willing to put in a bid for a non-border city. I think Pittsburgh is the city that could do it, and another big reason for that is that, as strange as it sounds, no NBA team there. I think that's a big help. That'll help. You know, the building's going to be free more often than not. So the Penguins pretty much have the run of the building in a way, and they'd be willing to go away for a while if it means putting Pittsburgh as a hockey hotbed and bringing one of the more prestigious tournaments that, thanks to the lockout, got a lot of attention in the United States this year.
You got great hockey to talk about. So, if you want to wrap this up a little bit here, we are more than happy to take questions on Twitter. If you want anything to be on the show, topics of discussion you'd like to hear us cover, segments you'd like to have us do. If you have any feedback for the podcast, certainly do let us know. I am available at thekid8711, thekid8711. Of course, Paul Roper available at Paul_Roper. So if you do have any questions, comments, or even suggestions for the show, please feel free to hit us up on Twitter.
Yes, hey, we had a lot of good talk here today, Jim, and hopefully it's the start of lots more talk. We didn't even scratch the surface of what we wanted to cover, but hey, it's great that we're able to discuss the NHL once again. So glad to have the top level of hockey return, and boy, there's going to be plenty that we're going to cover next time we do this.
Yeah, not sure what the schedule's going to be like yet. Hopefully we'll get to do this as often as possible with the Erie Otter season still going for Paul. And, of course, Penguins season in full effect here for myself. Might have to do some podcasts through Penguins games. I'll apologize in advance for screaming during the goals. But hopefully we can get together and do this quite often, because I had a great time talking with you today, Paul. Always do. And I think we got a lot of good information out there. So, like we said, if you have any questions, comments, anything, we are going to have probably a little bit more structured of a show going into the future.